All right, good morning, everybody. Jim Coventry from RotoWire here with the Week 13 live stream start sit. I'll give you the why so you can make the best optimal decision for your lineup. So again, we'll get after this in a second. Let's see. We got a question from M. Would I take a chance on Jelani Woods? Woods is interesting because we know he had the big week last week, but he more than doubled his season production last week. Now, we have seen Kylan Granson have a couple of good games this year. We saw Mo Alley Cox have a big game, and after those games, they all disappeared. If we watched that game last week against Pittsburgh, what we saw with Jelani Woods was that very much Pittsburgh saw and had a hole in their defense where the middle was open. That wasn't their game plan, but they identified it as a weakness right away, and they kept pounding the tight end. That was a product of that game. This is a very bad matchup. Dallas is top 6 against tight ends, so that makes it very problematic. So I think Woods is a very, very risky fantasy start because none of those tight ends, all 3 of them, 2 of them, 1 of them could all be an option. Extreme risk. John, need 2 running backs in standard: ETN, Rashad White, Brian Robinson, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones typically kills the Bears. He scored in his last 4 games against them, and week 1 or 2, I think maybe week 2, he smashed them, and no reason to expect him. He's eating like 70% of the snaps. So Aaron Jones is an auto start here. And I honestly think Travis Etienne is a good play. He's been cleared from the foot injury and actually not playing us. So he probably has him a bit fresher going into this one. So I think Travis Etienne is going to be your play. Rashad White is a tough matchup. Fournette's back. He'll eat a little bit into his touches. Brian Robinson has a good matchup, but the Giants could decide to stack the box and try to say Taylor Heineke, go ahead and beat us. So I think that Etienne and Jones are your options here. I will get some Instagram questions in a minute. I'm going with YouTube and Twitter for a couple minutes, and I'll come back and circle back, go back and forth. Delroy, Najee, or Rashad White. So Najee appears to be healthy. The Falcons matchup is not an oppressive one. It's a very middling matchup. So we got that. White has a very bad matchup, and again, Fournette will mix in for some snaps. Harris has been playing well, and I would be inclined to go at Najee Harris here because he has played well. I don't know if it's the foot injury earlier in the year, but he looks better. Delroy, Paris Campbell, or Zay Jones. So last week we thought with Pittsburgh having pressure, we thought Paris Campbell over the middle would be a really good option. He hardly got work. It's worse this week. Right tackle Braden Smith is out. The pressure is going to be enormous, and so I'm going to go Zay Jones, who's seeing a regular floor of targets, and he does not have a tough matchup. So that's the way I'd go. All right, Kenneth, you're welcome. Thank you for saying thank you. I'm going to get back to some questions. I'm going to go to Instagram and see what I can find here. Sorry, I got to reach across. New setup isn't the best for this. All right, so let's see. I got a few of them here, so let's take a bounce for a few. Christopher, I got one before you. Let me see. Nope, I guess that's the first one. All right, Christopher, I get you up right here, and you've got. All right, Jamar Chase, Tyreek, or CeeDee Lamb, start 3. Well, you got 3. Let's see. I see 3. You got 3, so I don't know what else to tell you on that one. Coach Amador, start full PPR flex. Miles Sanders, Jeff Wilson, or Josh Palmer. Sanders has a really, really bad matchup here against Tennessee. I'm expecting to get 40 to 50 yards. A touchdown's always iffy. Jeff Wilson also has a bad matchup, but he's been a very good running back. Last week, I think Miami just didn't show up offensively. Even though they scored a bunch of points, they really didn't show up. I think Jeff Wilson is a strong weekly fantasy play. I think he's going to get some volume. Josh Palmer is interesting because he's getting a lot of targets. He has a very favorable matchup. Mike Williams is out. Jeff Wilson is the most stable floor of the 3, but I think Josh Palmer is your boom bust. So if you need to swing for a 15, 18-point game, but you risk a 4 or a 5, I think Josh Palmer falls in that bucket. But he's getting like 8 to 11 targets in most recent games. So that's the way I look at it. But Wilson is safer for a floor, whereas Palmer has more bust potential if the team goes away from him. But I do think there's going to be quite a bit of activity for the running back, Jeff Wilson. King D Love, Rashad White, or Zeke. Rashad White is a bad matchup for, and that's going to be back. Zeke, Indy could be a problematic matchup as well, but Dallas has been blocking up the offensive line well. I think Zeke has a better chance of scoring, so I like Zeke Elliott there. And Sideshow Mill, hey, you need P. Ryan, Robinson, or Roberts. So Adam Schefter is saying that there is a chance that Joe Mixon gets cleared from the concussion pregame. Ian Rappaport's pretty much saying he's not playing. I always believe Schefter more, no offense to Rappaport. So I do think there's a chance that he gets activated. And P. Ryan has a late window game. So that becomes problematic for you because if that happens, then all of a sudden you're out. And Robinson, I'm assuming you mean James Robinson, and it's a terrible matchup either way, and they're going to split 3 men. I'm going to say Gus Edwards. He gets about 15 carries a week. Nice matchup. He gets goal line work there. And I'll take one more Insta question before I get back to Twitter and YouTube. Christopher, flex spot of Mixon, Sitch, you put P. Ryan over Mike Evans. Yeah, so Mike Evans, we don't know for sure that Marshawn Lattimore's playing because that's the guy he has his struggles against over the years. So there is that. But last week Brady just is not on the same page right now. So if I would say P. Ryan has a much better floor than Evans if Mixon's out because he's going to get 17 to 20 touches. And so I think we go that route. And then would I go Evans over Fournette, Rashad White? I would probably go since it's the same game, if Marshawn Lattimore is active, I would go with Rashad White. If Marshawn Lattimore is inactive, Evans gets a much better, less physical corner draw, and I would go with Evans. That's the way I'd go there. All right, let's get back to some Twitter and YouTube questions here. All right, let's see what we got here. We got John. You need one standard: T. Higgins, Ayuk, or Olave. Thank you, man. Thank you very much. So, look, Higgins they've been using him in multiple ways. They're using him on the intermediate routes. They're using him on the downfield routes, and he's winning pretty much across the board. With Jamar Chase back, that really makes life even easier for Higgins, and I think they're going to have to go to them frequently in this game. I do love Ayuk's matchup. Miami has a terrible secondary. I think getting the ball in the receiver's hands is optimal. Olave has the worst matchup of the three, because both corners, whether it's Jamel Dean or Carlton Davis, those aren't good matchups. And so of those three, I think Higgins is the best player, and I think he has as good a matchup as anybody else in this group. So I think Higgins and Ayuk have similar upside, but I think Higgins may have a higher floor because the 49ers sometimes get away from Ayuk. So for that reason, I would recommend Higgins. Watson or Carr. So the thing with the Chargers is you can run so well on them. You don't always have to throw a lot. And they do have a pretty good pass defense. Brandon Staley coaches up pretty well, keeps things in front of him. Watson is going to be volatile. We really don't know what we're getting at him. We don't know how much they're going to pass, but you think they want to get him on track. I think both of these are volatile options, but I tend to think that Watson is going to play. Actually, he's going to have some good looks. And I'm feeling that even though there could be some rust, I think that the motivation for him to get out and play well is going to be big for their team. It's really narrative driven, and I think they're very similar, but I have Watson well ahead of Carr in my rankings. G Money, Najee or Lazard. I don't think the Packers are going to throw a lot here against the Bears. I think they're going to run the ball with lots because Aaron Rodgers has 2 injuries. I think they're going to try to just manage this game. They should win with some degree of ease if they are solid on offense. I think the running game, they could really beat the Bears. The Bears have no ability to stop the run or the pass. And since they lost Roquan Smith, it's got even worse. So I would say that I don't think they're going to throw enough. And Christian Watson is really cutting into the targets there too. So I would go with Najee there. He's been playing really well. Tight end Ingram, his target share has dried up in the last 3 weeks. Logan Gesicki has like 3 catches for 34 yards over the last 3 weeks combined, and one of those was like a 20-yard catch. I'm going to go with Hooper there. I know Logan Thomas had me too. Hooper's been getting like 30 to 40 yards in a few straight weeks right around there, and he's been using the red zone a lot. And I do think the middle of the field's going to be open. The free safety's out, and their slot corners out for Philadelphia. So I do like Austin Hooper there. And then Pacheco or Rashad White. Again, I don't like the matchup for Rashad White so much, but Pacheco doesn't have an easy one either, because even if they drop players in coverage, Cincinnati on defense, they have DJ Reader in the middle who's a great run stopper, and Pacheco's pretty much like a one straight line run guy, but he's been fine with that. He's doing well. But I ultimately think White could see receptions, and I think that puts him above Pacheco, because if Rashad White gets 4 or 5 catches here, then that changes the script, because Pacheco has 1 target, I believe, in the last, 5 weeks, and he's rarely using the red zone. He scored last week, but that's rare for him. So I think Rashad White is a safer play here. And Kenneth, again, thank you. I appreciate that. And by the way, if you're on YouTube, if you hit the like and subscribe button, would appreciate that greatly. All right, let's see what else we got here. Look at a few Insta questions now. All right, when I start Chubb and Pierce. Pierce, his workload is slashed the last 2 weeks, and I don't think he has 20 yards in either of those games. I know it's a great matchup, but it's very troubling, the usage right now. And with Kyle Allen a quarterback, I would imagine Cleveland says, you know what, we're going to stop the run and make Kyle Allen throw, which they know good things can happen there. They're not scared. So I would prefer, I mean, obviously you're starting Chubb. If you had a better option than Pierce, I would go with that. Pierce has me worried right now. It's been a really rough run here. Christopher, Jamar, Chase, CD, Tyreek, start 2. Okay. Oh man, that's impossible, right? It's an impossible one because Jamar, I honestly, Jamar Chase was 564 and a touchdown in the second meeting against KC last year. It's possible he gets eased back in. They played him twice, so the deep stuff, they're going to know that exists. So, I mean, I have Chase and Tyreek ranked ahead of CD Lamb this week. But if you're worried about Chase being on a snap count, then maybe I just think in this place, you know what? Chase and Tyreek have week winning upside. CD's had one game like that in a couple of years. I just think that you go with your super studs here and you have to ride them. And there's going to be the occasional down week, but I just don't think there's ever a rationale that could say that could convince you and say they're going to have a bad game, because either of them could come up with 180 yards and we wouldn't even think twice about it. Mo Green, FlexPod, DPJ, Zonovan Knight, and Rashad. So James Robinson now is part of the mix. We heard this morning that he's going to be involved in a 3-man committee in that backfield. And Minnesota's a very good run defense. So, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's been very productive. We don't know how he'll do with Watson, right? Apparently, Watson and Cooper live across the street from each other, at least what I was reading, and they've been working together, and their chemistry is really good. But I don't know if Donovan Peoples-Jones has that week one for them chemistry together. So I'm going to say Rachaad White here. Again, I don't like his matchup, but he'll be involved as a receiver as well. So there is that. All right, Rocket Boris, pick 2. 3 PPR, Montgomery, Etienne, Pickens. You know what? Montgomery had a 15 for 122 against Green Bay the last time he played him. Etienne should be a featured part of the game, and it's not a tough matchup. They're going to get the volume here, and that volume makes them safer than Pickens. Pickens, Kenny Pickett just really throws a lot of bad passes. They say that they're, great play by Pickens. That's because the quarterback's struggling to get him the ball. And so I just think that Pickens has too much variance in his game, whereas Montgomery and Etienne both have upside. They both have floor. That makes them preferable starts. And again, I love Montgomery's matchup too here. Should I be concerned about Saquon this week? Well, we should, right now defenses have decided. We've seen this in the NFL as a trend, and I've learned over the last few weeks. Defenses are taking a playoff approach that they don't normally do in the regular season. They're taking these one-dimensional teams and they're forcing them to go to their weak hand. And we saw that 2 weeks in a row for Barkley, 15 for 22 against the Lions, and then Dallas 11 for 39. And his receptions less than 20 yards receiving despite a bunch of targets. So yes, absolute reason for concern, but he's going to get volume. He could break one. He should get some catches, but there's concern. And Philly is going to, Washington's going to manhandle the Giants up front, and they get Chase Young back. Ouch. But yeah, absolute concern about him. All right. And Mo, we got that one for you ready. Uncle Santini, Higbee or Ingram. This is tough because we don't know how much John Wolford is going to throw the ball to Higbee, but Ingram's target share has completely dried up. But that said, the Rams, I would think that they have a good opportunity in this game. The Seahawks are poor against tight ends, and I think Higbee would likely get more targets than Ingram, who, like I said, has dried up for no reason the last 3 weeks. And so I am going to lean with Higbee because they are really going to need him fairly badly. Jason, good morning to you as well. Debo or Christian Watson? So Debo, according to Adam Schefter, they thought he was not going to play, and then he showed them enough in practice on Friday to say he is going to play. But the fact he's in that type of situation means he's not 100%. Look, Christian Watson's gotten done 3 games in a row. The Bears are without Kyler Gordon. They're without Jaquan Brisker. They're without Eddie Jackson, 3 of their top 4 secondary guys, which means 2 safeties and over-the-top coverage is missing. Even if Aaron Rodgers throws 20 passes in this game, Watts has been getting looks in the red zone, downfield. Debo is risky because of the injury. If you're willing to fade the injury, Debo is a better floor play. But I think Christian Watson has a fine floor because of his recent role in the offense. And I think he has more upside than Debo because, again, Debo is apparently hurt. So that's what I would say there. And then Uncle Sandy, Fields or Dak. So Dak has been pretty much getting you 250 and 2 touchdowns, give or take, almost every week, and that's pretty safe. I don't know what we're getting out of Fields. I would imagine if the Bears are putting him on the field, my assumption is then they're going to allow him to run because they can't really go back. He's not a pocket quarterback. He has to be mobile. And the offense they've run is predicated on him moving. And so if they're putting him in, you're going to have a little risk because if he takes a shot on that and he maybe has an aggravation, that could be a problem. Now, it's not throwing shoulder, but they could take him out. They have a bye next week. So I think Dak is safe, very safe. like 252 touchdowns, you're good there. But if you need 30 points out of your quarterback or 25, Fields has a chance of getting that. I think there's more downside because of the uncertainty around him. So I think that's ultimately how you got to frame your decision. Do you want the safe points, or do you want to go the potential of boom bust? And that's how you have to frame your decision within the framework of your game. If you're a favorite in your game, Uncle Santini, I think then Dak just kind of solidifies that. But if you're an underdog, then Fields might be the way to go too. All right, Saloa, Brian Robinson, Pacheco, or White. So I like Brian Robinson's matchup here against the Giants. And the Giants are a really, really poor run defense. And I don't know that they have the resources to really stack up the box and overcommit. Washington does reasonably well on their offensive line. I know they have some injuries there, but I think they're still going to be just fine there. Pacheco, DJ Reader is in at interior defensive line for the Bengals. Really hard to run on him. Rachaad White has a bad matchup, but he should get some receptions. Ultimately, Gibson's going to play, so that takes some of the shine off of Robinson because he's going to lose some work there. Pacheco should get you 16 to 20 touches. I think Pacheco actually has the best floor of these three, but I think White, because of the potential for receptions in a really tough matchup and Fournette's coming back, I think White has a little more upside because Pacheco is not using the passing game. So, but I think Pacheco gets you a safe 10 points. But I think if you need to get, 18, then White has lower floor. He may not get to that where Pacheco's good, but he also has the ability to get higher because if he breaks something in the receiving game, that could be big for him. All right, Steve, see what you got here. Gus Edwards or ETN. So Gus has a pretty stable role. He gets you his 15 or so carries. He gets red zone work when they're down there, which is real useful. And, Denver, when you decide to run against Denver, teams have had success when they've committed to the run game. And Baltimore blocks it up pretty well in the run game. So I think it's a really nice matchup. ETN is a great matchup too. And we've seen him in the past. It's been a while, but they had been willing to give him 20 plus carries. And I think this is the kind of game where they could lean into that a bit more. So honestly, I think that I would roll with ETN there because I feel that his base will reach Edwards, but Edwards, unless he's getting multiple touchdowns, you can never really predict that. So I think that you go at ETN because I think ETN has a greater ceiling but a similar floor. And then your flex, Higbee or Komet, or Zay Jones. So, Zay Jones is getting targets. And I think that's the key he has over them all. Komet, we get Fields back, which certainly helps. Higbee, we don't really know what John Wolford, but Zay Jones is getting targets every week now. And I think even though you have the tight end premium scoring, Zay Jones should get you at least 5 catches for 50 yards, whereas Komet and Higbee could get you zeros. So I think because of that floor, we're going to go with Zay Jones. And then Uncle Sandy, Burks or Nico Collins. I don't like Burks' cornerback matchup with either Darius Slay or James Bradbury. I don't like that. I think they're going to want to run the ball. Nico Collins as a favorable matchup against Kyle Allen, a quarterback, but he did get that same 5 for 40. So Collins has had like a 3 straight game where he's been like 9 point something PPR points, and your half PPR would put him at about 7. Burks had a big play a couple of weeks ago in the game. It was like that 50-yard pass and the game was over, but they threw instead of ran. And so, but otherwise, Burks has similar numbers. I think Collins is a much more favorable matchup. I think they're going to be chasing points more. So I think it's 55% Collins, 45% Burks, but if you have a gut feel, definitely go with that. All right, let's get to on Insta here. Antonio Gibson or Fournette. You're very welcome. So, I am a little worried about Gibson with the foot. I'm worried that there could be a setback. Fournette, we really don't know what his workload is going to be. But the injury scares me to Gibson because he had a foot injury last year. And if Brian Robinson gets going and if the foot's, they have another option. And so I think Gibson has the better draw, much better draw. If he's healthy, he's a much better play than Fournette, who right now seems to be behind Rachaad White. And Fournette has a bad matchup. So this is how I'm going to frame it for you. If you're willing to take some risk that Gibson's foot's well enough to make it through the game, then I think you go with him. If you're nervous about the foot, then you have to pivot to Fournette. Personally, I would take the risk on Gibson because they're he's going to be a game day active. Of course, we'll check the inactives before kickoff. But as long as he's active, Fournette's trending down in that offense right now, and that's unfortunate for investors in him. Foxborough News, running back in a flex from these 4. Half-man PPR, you have Swift, Robinson, Kyron Williams, and Amore. Why am I struggling on Amore? Not quite sure who we mean A more. I don't know why I'm missing this, but maybe I'm missing something. Swift gets about 30% of the snaps, so he's very, very risky. He has to get a touchdown to cash in for you. Brian Robinson is a very good matchup, and he should have a high floor in this game. Think he'll be effective. And Kyron Williams, look, he hasn't done a lot yet, but he hasn't had an easy matchup, and he actually has one this week. And he saw 77% of the snaps last week, and he saw targets. So basically, I would go with Brian Robinson, and I would go with Kyron Williams here. Swift is too tough to count on right now because he's just not getting snaps. And as to Moore, I don't know if we mean Elijah Moore. I really don't know who we mean there, so I'm sorry. Maybe if I get that a stream at the end, I can help you with that. But if it's Elijah Moore, he only played 21 snaps this week. He had a touchdown, and so but the snaps aren't there, and so that worries me more than anything. Jason, Mixon, Pierce, or Brian. So here's the problem. Mixon plays a late game, and unless they deem him active, and right now Ian Rappaport says he's not playing. Adam Schefter says there's an outside chance he gets cleared before the game, but you have to make your decision before the early kickoff window. In that case, I'm going to say Brian Robinson. Pierce has been bad the last 2 weeks. They've cut his workload. It's a great matchup, but if he's not getting carries, it's useless. Brian Robinson will get work in a soft matchup. If there is definitive word that Mixon is playing, you start Mixon, but right now it's very iffy if he plays. Defensive pick between the Titans and the Chiefs. You know, I don't think Joe Burrow's making a lot of mistakes here. They fixed their offense up a lot. The Titans ultimately are going to put some pressure up front. Jalen Hurts could get forced into an interception. Obviously don't like either one, but I would lean the Titans because the Titans have a chance to create more havoc than the Chiefs do, I think, in this one. George, Swift, Patterson, Watson, or Kyron Williams. I think Christian Watson is 3 straight weeks now. He's gotten it done, and the Bears are down 3 of their top 4 secondary players. On that alone, I've got to say that even if he gets 6 targets, he comes through for you. The other plays are all. Patterson gets about 50% of the snaps, but the returns haven't been great lately. I do like Kyron Williams, but I think Watson has a higher floor than he does. And then Swift, like we said, he doesn't play enough right now, only 30% of the snaps, so that's been problematic. I'm gonna go with Christian Watson there. See what else we got here. Did I answer one? Gibson or Fournette? I answered that one right. I said Gibson over Fournette. And all right, Randy, you need a flex. Cortland Sutton, Elijah Moore, Knight, Warren, or Kyron Williams. So Najee Harris is supposed to play. And now James Robinson plays a 3-man committee against a really rough defense for Knight in Minnesota. Elijah Moore played 21 snaps last week. It's a great matchup, but I'm very concerned about the snap share. Cortland Sutton, when he's had tougher cornerback matchups earlier in the year, he's really been upset by those because basically his quarterback struggles to get the ball, and the Ravens are going to have Marcus Peters or Marlon Humphrey on him. So I'm a little concerned about that. I think ultimately Kyron Williams is tricky, but I think he has the most stable usage of this entire group. Now, that said, there's risk with him. So the highest floor play, I think, still is Sutton, because I think Sutton's going to get you at least 35, 40 yards here. But I would probably play Williams here because I just think his usage was 77% last week. And I think that this is the first easy matchup he's had. And so there's a lot to be said for that. Roddy, you need 2.5 PPR. Ayuk, Christian Watson, Peoples-Jones, and Miles Sanders. Look, a little narrative here, but I mean, Ayuk, it would seem like a great matchup. Miami stuffs the run. They're poor against the pass. The way to beat them is getting the ball into the receiver's hands, and you would think that Kyle Shanahan has a beat on it, and Ayuk's been really good in most of his games. No reason to see it going away from him. I like him. Peoples-Jones, a little concerned with the new quarterback coming in, that they don't have chemistry. He's been really good all season, and they could run the ball a ton on Houston. So there's that. Christian Watson, I think you go with him because, like I said, we've seen it 3 weeks in a row. Bears are down 3 players in their secondary. Miles Sanders has been great. Last week was wonderful, but he has a really bad matchup. Tennessee is a run-stuffing defense. Very hard to run on them. So I definitely think that. J. Red, pick 2 in the flex. Fournette, Peoples-Jones, or Samuel. So Fournette's in an ugly timeshare now, and he's on the back side of that. He didn't start in week 9 before the bye, and now he's coming back from the injury. But Rashad White's leading. It's a rough matchup. I just talked about Peoples-Jones, and then we have Deebo Samuel. Now, look, Deebo Samuel is not healthy, but he's going to play, and you've got to go with him over him because he's a featured part of the offense. But on your other two, honestly, I still think with Fournette's role in a bad matchup, I think I'm going to go with Peoples-Jones because I think still he's going to pick up at least 40 yards for you, and I don't know if Fournette has that. Bialy Ryan for the win. So again, Adam Schefter is saying that Mixon could get cleared. before the game for his concussion. And if he gets cleared, then P. Ryan loses almost all his value. So that's going to be very concerning. So make sure that you have a late game swap option if you have P. Ryan in your lineup and he's deactivated. And there aren't a lot of games to pick players. When I was kind of looking through, there aren't a lot of like players to switch in and out. Delroy, thank you. If you're on YouTube, please hit the like button and subscribe button. It'd be really, really appreciated. And I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks. Let's see what else we got here now. Randy, MVS or Sky Moore. So Sky Moore's had 6 targets in each of his last 2 games. He's caught 5 passes. One game his A-dot was 10.5 yards. The other game was 6. But if Cincinnati's going to come in and play a lot of zone like they did in the playoffs last year against them and force Mahomes to be patient, Sky Moore fits into that. MVS really doesn't, because they're going to drop a bunch of players and downfield stuff's not going to be there. So probability-wise, Sky Moore would be in the better position. The fact that he's gotten targets 2 games in a row, that gives us a little more confidence in him. Laura and Jim Cooperman, PPR, start 2 receivers. Running back flex. DeAndre Carter, Lazard, Pittman, Devontae Smith, Chark, Hasty, Pacheco. You got a lot of them here. Hasty, I think we're going to rule out because ETN's fine. And DJ Chark, even though he had the touchdown, his targets were low, and Jamison Williams back, that could eat into him a little bit there. So I'm a little bit down on him. Devontae Smith has seen like 8 and 9 targets in the last 3 games. He's only caught like was it 15 to 26 targets? So that hasn't been great. But he's getting work. And so there's that. And this is a very, very favorable matchup. Tennessee's number 31 against wide receivers. Lazard, I'm worrying that they're not going to pass a lot against the Bears because they're going to have a lot of success running the ball. And Christian Watson's kind of become the guy. So Lazard might only get 3 or 4 targets. Pittman has a nightmare matchup, but he should get a lot of short stuff underneath. So I think at least you're going to get 6 catches for 45 yards, and that actually piles up. So basically, and Carter is interesting because, he had the big game last week, but he gets targets, but he often doesn't do a lot with them. So he's kind of a difficult one to handicap. So I'm going to say Devontae Smith, Pittman as your receivers. Oh, 1 flex, 2 receivers. So we will play both of them. At running back, Pacheco, I think White has a tough matchup against New Orleans. You're hoping he gets a couple catches, but Pacheco should get you 75 to 95 yards. And I like that floor. There's probably not a lot of ceiling there, but I think I'm going to go with Pacheco for the floor. And then you need one more, the last one. So Devontae Smith, Pittman, Pacheco. I think Rachaad White, for your last one, has a better floor than Carter. Carter is more boom bust. So if you want a stable, like 8-point floor, then it's White. If you need like 18 points, Carter's going to get you either nothing or have the big game against the Raiders that can't really cover. So I probably would lean with White, though, on that one. J-Red, Sanders or Fournette? Sanders is a nightmare matchup. Fournette is a nightmare matchup, but Fournette is on kind of in the backside of a timeshare. At least Sanders has the lead role and a chance to break off something big. I'm going to slightly lean Sanders, but if you got a gut feel, go with it. Iron Eddie, full PPR, you need 1. Palmer, Sanders, Donovan Knight. Now James Robinson is playing, so that really hurts his outlook and it's a tough matchup. Brian Robinson, Rachaad White. So realistically, Palmer's been getting a lot of targets. So I think he is your safest option of this group. The Raiders are struggling to cover. I'm going to recommend Josh Palmer here. Sanders is a nightmare matchup. I love Brian Robinson's matchup, but if the Giants decide to stack the box and make the quarterback beat them, then Robinson may not. Robinson, in my opinion, is not a very good running back. Good for fantasy, right? But in Rachaad White, again, just a bad matchup. I would probably go with Josh Palmer there because the targets have been there the last few weeks, and they're good. This should be a shootout. That's the way I'd go. Jordan, Sanders, or Gibson. Since Sanders they have a lot of similar roles, right? And Sanders has a very bad matchup. Gibson has a very good matchup, but Gibson has a foot injury. So I'm going to tell you this. Gibson's a better play this week, but he's injured. And if that foot bothers him, they could easily push him to the sideline. So Sanders is safer. If you want to mitigate your risk, you play Sanders. If you're willing to say, okay, Gibson could have a setback on the foot, maybe the foot isn't quite right, then that makes him more boom bust. So I think the safe layup is Sanders. But Gibson, I think, has the higher ability for a bigger game despite the timeshare, but you got to measure in that risk. All right, let's see what else we got here on Insta. King Love. Let's see what you got here. You got pick one. It's sliding up on me. Sorry, guys. All right. Zay Jones, Pacheco, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Carter, Peoples-Jones. You know what? Jamal Williams is such a big part of that offense. Jacksonville can be had on the ground. They are top 10, but the run blocking for the Lions has been good. The pass blocking has, but the run blocking's been good. And he gets those goal line looks. I think Williams has the safest floor of this group, and I think he always has multi-touchdown upside. So these are all very, very good choices you have there. It's really hard to bench Jamal Williams because of the body of work he's had this year. And then we got a Jamal Williams or a Swift. Look, as long as Swift is only playing 30% of the snaps, Williams is playing like 45 to 50, but Williams, and they're both getting used around the goal line, but Williams is the one who's cashed in there. So look, you're going to frame it this way. Williams is a safe, solid play. And if you need those safe, solid points, you take them. If you need, and I mean, Williams has multi-touchdown upside too, but Swift could always break a long play. They tried to get him involved in the goal line on Thanksgiving. It didn't really work out. He just came short on a touchdown. Swift is a lot riskier, but he does have that theoretical upside, or if he could break an 80-yard run where Jamal Williams isn't doing that. Williams is just way safer, and that's probably the way to look at it, right? All right, let's see what else we got here now. Killer Koch, you missed it. Your phone rang. Well, you're going to have to repost the question. I don't remember. I'm sorry, but I'll get you. Good morning, Chargers fan. Half PPR, Rashad White, Evans, or Pickens. So Pickens is just up and down. It's not his fault. He's a supremely talented player, but his quarterback is very inconsistent getting him the ball. What I do is this. I'm going to wait for the Monday night game because you got two players there. And what I'm going to do is if Lattimore for the Saints is active, Evans struggles against it. So I'm going to bench Evans. But if Lattimore is inactive, I'm going to play Evans, and otherwise I'm going to use White. I'm going to pivot between them just because Pickens is so volatile and he kind of brings the same variables. But if Lattimore is out, Evans could potentially go off in that game. And then Killer Cods, Lazard or London. So, I'm going to lean London here. I'm just very concerned that Lazard's targets are going to fall. It may be a game where Rodgers throws the ball 20 times because you can run so much on the Bears, and we know Christian Watson's been a big factor in the pass game for them. So Lazard's a great blocker. I was saying this earlier in the season, and when they can use him as a blocker, they like that. Whereas London, I think, is going to see some targets here. Pittsburgh secondary struggles. But, man, it's really – because London hasn't had 40 yards in the game since week 3. But Lazard has been slower. So – you know what? I can't recommend Drake London. And last week he should have gotten targets, right? Kyle Pitts was out, and he saw crap. You know what? The Bears secondary is so bad. Even if Lazard gets 3 targets, he could go for 50 yards and maybe score a touchdown. I'm going to say 55% Lazard, 45% London. If you got a gut feel, go with it. But it was sickening to see how little they used London in a great matchup last week. I don't understand the coaching staff there. Jose. Ravens or Commanders D. I like the Commanders here because they're getting Chase Young back. The Giants line has been a wreck. They've had a lot of injuries, players less than 100%. They're going to attack them, I think. And then you got Robinson, Swift, Pierce, Kyron Williams. You need 2. So I assume you mean James Robinson. Oh, Brian Robinson. Yeah, there we go. So I think you got to play Brian Robinson. I think the matchup is really strong here. Swift, again, only 30% of the snaps. Pierce, he's been less than 20 yards in each of the last 2 games. They've cut his work. It's a great matchup, but they're not using him. And so right now it's very hard to trust him because if they're phasing him out for some stupid reason, or if he hit the rookie wall. Some people are saying that. I don't know how true that would be, but it's something to consider. Kyron Williams, it's risky, but he had 77% of the snaps last week. He saw targets. He saw carries. He has a first easy matchup. I would personally start Robinson and Kyron Williams, but if you feel like that Swift is going to have on that 30% snaps, he's going to have that touchdown. He's going to get that big play. He's your boom bust guy. He'd be the volatile option over Kyron Williams, who actually, in my mind, has a floor this week, which is crazy to say, but I believe it's true. Delroy, Dameon Pierce. I got to go with Zeke here because I just talked about Dameon Pierce. And Zeke does not have a great matchup, but Dallas blocks it up really well. And Zeke has been, look, he'll be fully healthy this week. They played last Thursday, and he had a decent snap share, but he should be back to his normal role, and he gets goal line work. So I got to go with Zeke because Pierce is really struggling right now. Christopher Njoku out here. Your options. Dulcich, Tunyon, Hooper, Fant. I'm going to go with Hooper. He's been a bigger part of the offense. The Eagles are down their free safety and their slot cornerback, which the middle of the field should be open. That's where you want to attack them anyway. So I'm going to go with Hooper out of that group. Dulcich is actually that 1 9-target game, but he's 3, 4, or 5 targets in the other game. Christopher, you're welcome. DeAndre Carter or Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore played 21 snaps last week, and I know he had the touchdown, but that low snap share still concerns me greatly. So I think DeAndre Carter, who has been on and off, but he's getting regular snaps and he's playing. So I just think you take the guy who's playing more snaps, and ultimately is a better quarterback too. And the Vikings have a pretty good pass rush, so that could really make things difficult for Mike White. It's really 50-50. But I think the risk with more on this low snap share makes me go toward DeAndre Carter. If you got gut feel, go with it. And let's see here. Pickens or Devontae Smith. So Devontae Smith's at 8, 9 targets in the last 3. He's only caught 16 of them. But the usage has been there, and Tennessee's number 31 against wide receivers. And I think ultimately they're going to have to pass to win this game. And so I like Devontae Smith over Pickens just because Pickens' quarterback struggles to consistently get him the ball well. Rodney, you need 2 out of Lockett, Collins, Thielen, Zay Jones, and Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk is really tough to start because he has so many solid games, and they're going to need him. Miami's a team you can't run on, but you can pass on them. And Debo's less than 100%, and maybe McCaffrey's less than 100%. So to me, I see Ayuk as a guy that's definitely getting in there. Lockett has been getting it done, whether it's touchdowns or yardage all year. And, with both the top pass rushers for the Rams being out, I think this is a favorable matchup for him. The other one's tough. Collins is a good matchup, but he's got Kyle Allen throwing the ball. Zay Jones had a good floor of targets. He had a big game last week, but he's been getting a solid floor. Thielen, I kind of knew against New England he'd score because they would put so much attention on Jefferson. But ultimately, the Jets' corners could be a bit much for Thielen. So I'm going to say Lockett and Ayuk. And my third one, I'm going to take the safety of Zay Jones' target floor. And yes, Ken Walker does have a very good matchup because Aaron Donald is out and A'Shaun Robinson's on the IR. Therefore, the Rams, who are the number 1 run defense in the league, are now looking more like a 15-18. So this is a very, very good matchup for him. And Disco Dave, you need a running back, receiver, and a flex, TD heavy. You got DK Metcalf, Christian Watson, Amari Cooper, Pacheco. There's a K at the end, but I don't know what that means. So, all right. So, DK Metcalf has a good matchup here this week. At touchdown heavy, he does have a good chance to score against the Rams. Christian Watson, we can't argue with the touchdowns late. And the Bears are down 3 defensive backs, 2 a corner and 2 safeties. And I think that helps him. So you got to sit one of these. So basically, think the one we're sitting, you need a running back out of this group, though. Well, I don't know who you're. Well, I only see one running back name on there. So basically, of your other 3, I would rank them this way. And actually, you know what? I'm going to put Amari Cooper there because I think Watson is going to look to him in his first game back. So I'm going to put Metcalf third. I'm going to go Watson, Cooper, then Metcalf, and then your running back Pacheco. I don't know who else you got, but that's the way we frame that one out. Walker or Elliott. I got to go with Walker here. Walker has the backfield to himself. It's now a favorable matchup. Elliott has a very tough matchup. Indy's very good against the run, and he splits obviously the work. So living the dream, Kamara or Najee. Kamara has not been great lately. They finally got him 7 targets. I think he was better than the 4 or 5 he had seen the previous 3 games. Ultimately, I'm not sure if Najee is up for a setback on that abdominal injury he had. And overall, I just think that Kamara, seeing the bump in targets last week, helped him, but Najee's been playing so well. But you know what? The Falcons are like a top 10 run defense per Pro Football Focus. So this isn't like an easy matchup. So I would lean slightly Kamara because of his usage in the passing game. And Najee maybe has a potential for a setback with his abdominal injury. Eric, Kirk, Metcalf, Cooper. So, we know Kirk has quite a bit of usage in the slot, which has been useful for him, been down and up. Metcalf, again, the target's been getting better. Cooper, we don't know what we're going to get from Watson, but Watson apparently lives right by him. They've been working together. Cooper said the chemistry was already great. Cooper's been like an absolute superstar this year, and there's nothing scary about the matchup with the Texans. So I'm going to go with Cooper here because he's the lead receiver, and apparently they have off-field chemistry that they've worked on. So I'm gonna roll with that. All right, let's see if I have any other here on Insta. Henry, Damian Pierce or Burks. Again, Pierce's workload is chopped the last 2 weeks, and he's not playing well right now. And the matchup is great, but the usage has been bad, and I'm very concerned there. I got to go with Burks. I don't like the cornerbacks he's facing, but he's getting 6 to 8 targets a game. He's a very physical presence. When he's on Slay, I think Slay's ability gets diminished because of the physicality Burks brings. When he's on the side of Bradbury, that one gets minimized a bit, but I still think Burks gets enough targets, and Pierce has just been very risky. I'm going to say this. Burks doesn't have a big ceiling, in my opinion. I think he has a good floor. But if you need a 15 to 18 point game out of your player because you're like an underdog, I think you start Pierce and hope that against a bad run defense he gets together. But if you need a solid 8 to 10 points, Burks is your guy. He should have that for you. He should have you covered there. Anthony, Lazard, or Pacheco? I'm going to say Pacheco. He has a more stable role right now. I don't know how much the Packers are going to pass. Rodgers has 2 injuries. Edwards or Sky Moore? Edwards, again, is way safer. Moore has seen 6 catches 2 games in a row. Last week was a lot of underneath stuff, and he might see more underneath stuff today. But Edwards is such a fundamental part of that offense, and they're playing Denver, and you can run on Denver. So I'm going to, I like them both, but I think Edwards has a much better chance of scoring, and I think that's where my prediction lies. Rashad White or P. Ryan. So we'll make it real easy. If P. Ryan is the starting running back, you go with him because he's going to get the majority of the work. He's going to get targets. He gets a lot of targets. They're going to need him against Kansas City, and Rashad White's in a timeshare, and it's a rough matchup. P. Ryan is a better matchup, less competition. So if Mixon's inactive, you start P. Ryan. If Mixon's active, you got Rashad White. Mohammed, you got Dameon Pierce, Najee, or P. Ryan. So Najee plays an early game. So your problem with P. Ryan is very simple. Is that we don't know. We may not find out till an hour and a half before kickoff if Mixon's active, and then you're kind of stuck on P. Ryan. If Mixon's active, you got nothing. So based on that body of knowledge, and Dameon Pierce hasn't played well the last week. He has a great matchup, but again, he's only got a few touches. He hasn't done well with them. He's trending downward right now. I got to go with Najee Harris there, unless there's definitive word that Mixon is 100% out. If he's 100% out, then I think P. Ryan gets enough volume to be good here. Remember, Najee has it sounds like it's a good matchup, but the Falcons have been top 12 against the run. They've been very good. So, Shane, you need 2. P. Ryan, Wilson, Mostert, Pittman, Sutton. Yeah, I get that. And it's standard. That hurts Pittman. That hurts Sutton. Sutton has a tough cornerback matchup, and he's not come up small in those because of his quarterback. Pittman has a really bad matchup because the pressure and right tackle Braden Smith is out. Mostert sees a small amount of work because Wilson's kind of the guy. So you got to go with Wilson. And all right, so here's the deal. We're going to do this. P. Ryan is going to be the same thing I told the last question, Mohammed. If Mixon is active, then you put in Pittman, who's a night game, over him because you got to do it based on the time. And if Mixon's inactive, then P. Ryan and Wilson are your guy. That's the way to go with that. All right, see what else we got here. And you've got Moises, you've got Thielen or Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson has not had any ceiling at all. It's been terrible. Thielen has a bad matchup, but he gets that 7 to 9 targets most weeks, and they're coming in a better situation. So Deontay Johnson has scored a touchdown all year. I don't see that changing. His quarterback's only thrown 3 touchdowns, 8 picks. I got to go with Thielen. The probability says that he has an increased floor, and he certainly has a little more upside than Deontay Johnson. Edward, full PPR 1, Kamara, White, Swift, Robinson, Wilson. So Wilson had a bad game last week, but he's been great. But it's a tough run defense. The 49ers are really an excellent run defense. Robinson is a great matchup, but if the Giants decide to stack the box and make Heineke beat them, they could slow Robinson down. Swift plays 30% of the snaps. I'm going to go Kamara. Kamara is the best player of this group. His matchup is not oppressive, and he did have 7 targets last week. I'm not going to overthink it. Rashad White has a tougher matchup. I'm going to go with Kamara for that reason. Neil, Melly Matrix. Need 1.5 PPR. Kamara, Pittman, Carter, scores more. Again, same thing here. I'm not going to overthink this one. I know he hasn't been great the last 3 weeks. He fumbled at the goal line. He fumbled twice last week. But Kamara does not have an impressive enough matchup to me to go away from him here. And so I'm going to lean with the best player. And the other players, DeAndre Carter has a good matchup, but he's not the focal point of the offense. Sky Moore has a chance to get another 6 catches, but there's a lot of underneath stuff. I just think ultimately that 7 targets last week gave me hope that they're getting back to using him in the passing game. Pittman has a bad matchup. Cola, Going Zonovan Knight. James Robinson's supposed to play a 3-man timeshare, gets a great run defense. Zay Jones has a great floor. Darius Slayton, he counts on that one deep play each week, which he gets. He gets you 60, 80 yards a week. So on one deep play, if that ever goes bust, his stat line goes bust. Sutton is a bad matchup here, and his quarterback's struggling to give him the ball when he has a bad matchup. You already have Christian Kirk, which is fine. I'm still going with Zay Jones here. I think he has the highest. Well, here's I'll tell you. Yeah, I don't think that Slayton's ceiling is much. I mean, any of these guys score a touchdown, and if they do, then they win, right? But I can't predict any of these guys will score a touchdown. I think Zay Jones' target floor puts him well above Slayton and Sutton because he's getting 7, 8 targets in a lot of these games, where Slayton's getting 3 to 6. Sutton, it's just poor quality of play. So I'm in Zonovan Knight. I can't play. It's a bad run defense. And like I said, James Robinson's playing. They probably go hot hand, and that could be Ty Johnson. Heck, right? Mo, you're very welcome. Thank you. Jose, Chase Young is not active, which is fine. It doesn't really change my outlook on the Washington defense. It doesn't change it much at all because they've been doing very well without him. It'll be a bonus when they do get him, but at this point, it doesn't change the equation. They've still been playing very, very strong. Jonathan Allen is a legit superstar tag. Let's look at some injuries here real quick here. The Bears is expected. We know they're down 3 defensive backs. We talked about that. Jaylen Warren is active, playing along with Najee Harris, but in his normal rotational role. We knew the Vikings were out their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, which is really bad news for Kirk Cousins. Kenny Golladay is out. I'm sure everybody's crying over that one. We know Adoree Jackson is out, which that helps Terry McLaurin a bit. And no surprises for the Eagles. Rex Burkhead's inactive. Eno Benjamin is going to be active, which will be interesting because in a deep league where you're like desperate, he could be somebody to use. We already know Brandon Cooks was out, and their corner Derek Stingley's out. Let's see here. Nothing on the Atlanta side, it doesn't look like. Romeo Doubs is inactive again. David Bakhtiari we knew was out, but against the Bears, that shouldn't matter. And no surprise inactives for the Titans. Ronnie Stanley, the left tackle, we kind of knew he'd miss this one for the Ravens. I think they'll be fine without him in this one. And let's see if there's any other one teams here. As you just mentioned, Jose, Chase Young is inactive here. They are missing their guard, Trey Turner, which doesn't help. Darrell Henderson is inactive for the Jaguars, which means they do believe Travis Etienne is fully healthy. We knew David Njoku was out already for the Browns, and Michael Carter was doubtful all week. He's officially out. So, again, it's going to be James Robinson, Zonovan Knight, and Ty Johnson. Jerry Jeudy is active, as we had heard this morning. Zay Jones and Travis Etienne, we never doubted for a minute. Jamison Williams is active, but understand, I fully would imagine he will be on a snap count. And again, differing reports. ESPN's Dan Graziano reports Joe Mixon is highly unlikely to play. But again, Adam Schefter said, and that's the same company, right? But he said that if the independent neurologist clears him, he's going to play. So again, just be open to knowing it's not 100%. It sounds true. It sounds like he's not going to play, but we got to be careful because, it's a late game window. So if you don't have a flip option, then we're set there. All right, let's get back to some questions here. Shane, you got Watson, Pitkins, Deontay Johnson, Olave, CD Lamb need to bench too. You know what? I mean, Atlanta is not a good pass defense, and but it always feels like Deontay Johnson has no ceiling. He doesn't score a touchdown all year. He hasn't gone much over 40 yards. So I just think he's one of those guys because he has no ceiling. I think you bench him, and then you can't bench CD Lamb. I don't think. I think CD Lamb has really been coming on, and I think against the Indy defense, Kenny Moore is out, and I think that helps him as well. And Watson is when he's gotten done 3 weeks in a row, and the Bears are down 3 secondary players, so I think you got to play him. So and then can you really bench Olave, right? I hate the matchup, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, but all right, so your third one, Olave's your floor guy. He may not go off here, but he probably gets you about 8 points, right? And you're good. Pickens could get you a 3 or a 15. So if you want the safe play and you're good with that, go with Olave. If you need to take some risk because you're an underdog, then you probably go with Pickens for that. Trey, more than you as well. Star 2, ETN, Jeff Wilson, Rashad White, Lenny, or Devontae Smith. Good luck to you as well. So I think ETN you got to go with. He's clear to the foot injury. We love the matchup against Detroit. We've seen them give him upwards of 24 carries in games. So I think you got to play him for his role. And Jeff Wilson's playing at a really high level. He has a bad matchup. There's no question. Rashad White has a bad matchup too, and Lenny's back. So I think Rashad and White, you got to cancel them both out. I think we sit them. Devontae Smith, though, is where I'm probably going to – him and Wilson are close, right? Devontae's at 8 or 9 targets in his last 3 games. Now he's only caught 16 to 25, but it's a really favorable matchup. Tennessee's number 31 against receivers. So I think that we look at Devontae Smith and we say, you know what? He has an elevated ceiling because Wilson could have a bad matchup here. Last week he did poorly. I believe the whole team, like they scored 30 points, but they didn't show up. They just were not ready to play. So Wilson's a solid play, but Devontae Smith's getting target volume now with no Dallas Goedert. And I think they're going to go with the pass first approach. So I am going to slightly go Devontae Smith over Jeff Wilson. But if you have a gut feel on Wilson, you go with it because he's a very viable play. Tua or Dak? I'm going to go with Dak here. Both offensive tackles for Tua are out. Nick Bosa is going to be in that backfield a lot. Fred Warner will take a lot away of those zone looks that Tua thrives on. I think this game plays to Tua's weaknesses. So Dak has that strong floor every week. I don't see a ceiling game out of Tua. Could it happen? Of course. He has Tyreek Hill, right? Tyreek Hill makes 2 big plays, and guess what? Tua has a big day. I don't see it, though. I think they played this game 10 times. I think Tua struggles in 8 of them. I'm going to go with Dak. Fields or Watson? You know what? They both have risk. Watson could have a lot of rust. He really hasn't played like a game in like 2 years almost. And Fields has risk because we don't know what his real situation is. But because they both have risk, Fields has gotten it done this year. So I'm going to go with Fields there because I think in the situation that they both have risk, Fields has upside. We don't know what Watson's upside right now is. That's a good problem to have. Swift or Jamal Williams? So it's basic. To me, is that you got to go through. You got to look at your game. Williams is probably going to get you 10 fantasy points, and he could score multiple touchdowns and did beat that. But basically, he's like a 10-point guy for you, right? Swift's only playing 30% of the snaps. He needs a touchdown. He needs a big play, and they really haven't been there consistently. So Williams is your safe, set it and forget a guy. But if you need to take some element of risk in your game, if you're a bigger underdog, Swift could always come out and get an 80-yard run, and it could change their whole day. But Williams is the one that's going to get you the bread and butter and the points. So that's the way I'd look at that one as well. See if I have another Insta questions here. Thielen or Deontay Johnson? I think I may have answered. I'm going to go with Thielen there. Overall, Deontay Johnson has 0 upside, so that worries me. Mixon. So Dan Graziano, yeah, I said, maybe you were here when I answered it already. You probably were, but he's saying it seems doubtful. So that's the latest word. Schefter was still this morning holding out that they could clear him. So, but right now it seems more pessimistic. And then Tua or Deshaun Watson. You just heard me talk about Tua a second ago. Look, Watson going back to Houston, got weapons. They're going to run, but they have play action. Tua's a bad matchup. He's missing both offensive tackles. If it's me on my team, I'm going with Watson because I think Watson's in a much better spot. He really has something to come out and show today. I think Tua's going to be under a lot of duress. I think this game plays to Tua's weaknesses. But you've been counting on Tua, and he's been doing it for you. And if you're nervous about Watson, it's defensible to play Tua because he's got Tyreek Hill. He's got Jalen Waddle, so he's got that for him, right? Brandon, DPJ or Pickens or Burks? Little uncertainty with Donovan Peoples-Jones because we don't know what the chemistry between him and Watson is going to be. Pickens has the up and down because of his quarterback, and getting the ball downfield is not good for him. Treylon Burks has a tough matchup, but he should get you 40 to 50 yards. Ultimately, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones has the biggest upside of this group, but there's a floor because of the unknown. Burks has the most stable floor. So if you want a floor game, a solid 9, 10-point game, you got Burks. If you're willing to risk a 3 or a 4 for potential 15, then it's Donovan Peoples-Jones. And Chargers fan, you're welcome. And I'm going to get through these Insta questions, and I'm going to just go to Twitter and YouTube right after that. So let me get through these. Fishtail, Carr or Jimmy G. You can run all over the Chargers. They're decent against the pass. Jimmy G, it's the opposite, where Miami's stuffed the run, but not good against the pass. I like Jimmy G there. Pickens or Sutton. You know what? Sutton has a bad matchup, and Wilson has not gotten it done with him in those games. I'm going to take even though Pickens has risk as well, Pickens matchup is much more favorable. So I will 51 to 49% go Pickens. If you have a gut feel, trust it. Cabroom, Pickens, or Washington. We got to go with Watson. He's gotten done 3 weeks in a row, even if the Bears are down 3 defensive backs. Henry, Jets or Seahawks defense. The Jets might, left tackle Christian Darrisaw is out for the Vikings. That could lead to Cousins throwing like a bad pick off a sack. Defense are real fickle. I'm going to say the Jets there. And then Dalvin Cook or Zeke. You know what? I got to go Dalvin Cook. Right? I know it's a tough matchup, and I know Darrisaw is out, but Zeke doesn't have a great matchup either. Indy's pretty good against the run. And Cook will have a higher snap rate. So I'm going to go Cook because he could break a long run where you don't really get that from Zeke too much. JR rookie, Gus or Kyron Williams. Gus is way safer. He gets you 15, 16 carries. He gets goal line worth. Greetings from Mexico as well. So I'm going to say Gus Edwards is way safer. Kyron Williams in PPR, though, he is your more boom bust because he has an easy matchup now, and he's getting targets, he's getting rushing attempts, but he's way riskier. So I would just like say, you know what, I got Gus. I'm not going to take the risk. But if you need 18 points out of your running back, Williams has a low floor, but if he gets enough targets in an easy matchup, he could get there. But Gus is going to get you that 10 to 14, and he's kind of safe there. And then I would take them over Burks. Burks has a tough cornerback matchup. He's going to see Slay and Bradbury, so that gets me a little bit nervous there. And Josh, Evans, or Lockett. You know what? Since Evans, we won't know if Marshawn Lattimore's playing until tomorrow. I'm going to say Lockett because Evans has struggled terribly against Lockett in the past. I guess Marshawn Lattimore. I'm sorry. Lisa, good morning to you as well. Debo and Chase is wide receiver and flex with Swift and Gus on your bench. Would you play? So I think Chase you got to go with. I mean, because you know that he doesn't blow up every week, but the fact he's out there, his floor is so high, and then he's got that exponential ceiling. So it's impossible for me to tell someone to sit him. Now, Debo, it's interesting because Debo's not 100% here, right? And he's only getting 10 touches a game. I think ultimately Gus Edwards is safer. He's 15, 16 carries a game. He gets regular goal line work. It's not a bad matchup. I think Gus is safer. Now, could Debo go off in this game? If he ends up healthier than we think, because apparently Friday, they didn't think he was playing as a Friday, and he showed him something in practice. So Debo is a lot more risk. If you want the safe points, I'm going with Gus. I'm not really going to trust Swift. He plays 30% of the snaps. It's not enough to override Debo or Chase. So I would frame it that way, Lisa. If you want the safe points, you go Gus. If you're willing to risk an in-game setback, Debo has a much higher ceiling because Miami's secondary is not good at all. And again, I'm going to get through these Insta questions here. And Lisa, you got Watson or Tua. So they both have risk because Watson hasn't played in like 2 years. There could be an element of rust here. Tua has a bad matchup. He's missing both offensive tackles, and that's going to be. And then Fred Warner in the middle of the field because he's really good against zone. Tua is, and Fred Warner is like a genius. Like he knows where exactly to cover. And remember, Tua's offense he's running. That's the offense that came from Kyle Shanahan, so he's well versed in. I'm going to go with Watson here because I just think these variables against Tua are excessive. And Lisa, you got Hollins or Van Jefferson. I don't trust that John Wolford's going to be able to get Van Jefferson the ball. Hollins will be the least defended. No, all right. So here's the thing with Hollins, though. The Chargers keep their defensive backs deeper, and they keep things in front of them. So I don't think there's any big plays for Hollins. But Hollins could get 5 or 6 catches for 40 yards. Jefferson has a zero downside. And if he has Tariq Woolen on him, I think he's done. I don't think Van Jefferson can win against Woolen, and he's going to see a lot of time on him. I'm going to go with Hollins for that reason. All right, caught up on Insta. Everybody on Insta, thank you. Good luck. If you want to catch me, go to the YouTube RotoWire page, and I'll get you there. All right, close that one out. And I promise, guys, I'm coming back. All right, good. All right, here we go. 11:57 Eastern, 10:57 Central. Let's get through these guys. Henry, would I start Fields or Watson? You've heard me talk about Watson quite a bit here. And so I have nervousness about Watson because of the rust potential. Fields, we don't know if he's 100% healthy, but he is out there. You can run. Look what Jalen Hurts did to them on the ground last week. I'm going to lean Fields because he's been so darn good, and that running ability has been there. But and because I think Fields' injury risk and Watson's rust are equal write-offs. So I think Fields has a little bit more built up from his recent performances. So I'm going to go with him. Swift is Jamal Williams. Yeah, it's a great question. I get that one all the time. And again, Williams is much safer. He has that. He's going to play 45% of the snaps. He's going to get you 14 to 20 carries. He's going to get a carry or two in the red zone. Swift is going to play 30%, and you're going to hope he gets a big play. You're going to hope he gets a touchdown. And so if you're willing to risk a very low floor for Swift, but you might get more upside, but then Williams could score 3 touchdowns, right? And we wouldn't even have a debate. So I think Williams, just that safety is just way overrides it. And let me just say how many questions I got here. I got quite a bit. So I am going to get through these fairly quickly at this point. I'm sorry. I like to spend as much time, but I do need to get these out by quarter after the hour. So let's get here. Michael, you've got need 2 of the 4. Davis, Sutton, Moore, Nico. I'm going to go Nico Collins here as one. He's Brandon Cooks is out. And then Sutton hasn't done well in bad matchups. Corey Davis, I think, is a secondary option in what could be a lower scoring game. That could be problematic. I think Mike White's going to be more about Garrett Wilson and the running backs and tight ends here. So even though Elijah Moore plays a lower snap share, I think his middle of the field is going to be something that's going to work with Mike White. So I'm going to go Collins and Elijah Moore. If you have a gut feel on those, because they're all kind of, you see the wild variance, which is why you're asking me that question. But those are the 2 I'll recommend. Bands. Pick 2 full: Claypool, Duvernay, and Van Jefferson. So with Mooney out, I'm going to say Claypool could get you 6 targets. Duvernay is always very risky because he just disappears for periods. I mean, Denver's corners, that's no joke. And he's like a special teamer probably on most teams. So I'm going to say because Duvernay is going to be overmatched by the Denver corners, I'm going to go Claypool and Van Jefferson. Rod, should you play Knight over Cook, Jones, or Etienne? No, James Robinson's playing. Minnesota is an elite run defense. Knight had that decent game against the Bears, who are one of the worst run defenses in the league. So do not play. I do not recommend playing Knight over any good option, which you have 3 really good options. If these were guys, you're talking about Kyron Williams or somebody that had a lot of more risk, but not over those options. All right, Charlie, Lamar versus Denver, Justin Fields. So, yeah, Denver is ultimately not a good matchup. Now, I think they're losing a little bit of the morale because they didn't play with the heart they did on defense last week, but still, this is not a good matchup for a quarterback. Whereas Justin Fields is going to probably run. If he's healthy, they're putting him out there. You would assume he's going to run. And if he's going to run, that he caps Lamar with that because he actually runs more than Lamar, right? And Lamar has like 1 touchdown in like the majority of his games or fewer. So I'm going to go with Justin Fields there. And I know he played him earlier in the year, but they weren't running the offense until like middle of the season. I'm going to go with Fields there. Ray, Swift or Rachaad White? Swift has an somewhat easier matchup than Rachaad White does. They're both splitting time. So Swift, like I keep saying, you know what? He could take an 80-yard play to the house at any time. He's that talented. And I think Swift has a much more volatile range of outcomes. So if you want volatility, you're going to go. I think Rachaad White's going to get you about 10 points. And I think you're good with that. I would start the 10-point guy. Swift could get you a 4. He can get you a 16. Could break a long touchdown and make it a little better than that. But I think the safety is what you're going to go for. If you're a big underdog, then I think you make the consideration of Swift. I don't think Rachaad White catches a lot of passes. Fournette's going to be back involved too, and the Saints are pretty good against receiving backs. So MK2000, you're crazy for flexing Jamal Williams? No, you're not. Right now, we think Marshawn Lattimore is going to play, and Marshawn Lattimore's had a great history against Evans. Brady is not on the same page with him right now. So I know you're not crazy at all for doing it. If you get definitive word that Marshawn Lattimore is out, which I do not have that right now, it's a Monday night game, then I would change course. But right now, we assume he's playing. So I would say Jamal is not crazy at all. Billy. All right. You got Dylan or Gus. I got to go Gus. I know Dylan did okay last week, and the Bears are a bad run defense, but I think probability. I always work in probabilities, right? Gus gets you 15 to 16 carries. He gets you that strong floor. He's a factor in the red zone. Aaron Jones, on the other hand, against Dylan's playing like 70% of the snaps last few weeks. He's become the clear lead guy. And, back to Baltimore, Denver, if you run on them, and I know their run numbers for the season are good, when you commit to run against them, you do very well, and I see that here. Probability-wise, Gus is a better play. Brian Robinson for Brandon, P. Ryan, or Fournette. Again, so I think Brian Robinson is your play because it's an easy run defense. there's a 10% chance maybe that Mixon plays. And if that happens to you, then P. Ryan gets you like a 4 or a 3, and you're stuck. There's a 90-something% chance that P. Ryan gets the start. I don't know if it's worth benching Robinson over that. Remember, P. Ryan produced like 3 yards a carry. That's about what he is. And he gets targets, so it's great. But that 10% chance of Mixon, Adam Schefter said Mixon could get cleared. And if he gets cleared, and Fournette, to me, is like the back end of the option with White, and it's a 2-man backfield now. I'm going to say I would be safe with Brian Robinson. Now, if you feel really good that Mixon's not playing, then I guess you know what you can do? You can say, you know what, feel good he's not playing. P. Ryan ultimately is going to get probably a little more volume than Robinson because Robinson's going to split with Gibson, right? So you play P. Ryan there. And then if Mixon's active, then you go to Fournette. You take a little hit there, but it's probably worth it. I'm going too long. I got to get through these. Christopher, Watson or Cousins? Cousins when I was left cornerback. He's left tackle. Christian Darrisaw's out, and those corners are no joke. And I know Justin Jefferson's going to get open and get his. I think Watson ultimately has a similar floor, but I think he could have a big game even if they run a lot too. So I'm going to go with Watson, 60 to 40%. Jerry Jeudy or London. Uncle Unite Santini, I'm nervous about Jeudy coming back from injury. You got a good option in Drake London, but Drake London doesn't get 40 yards in a game, But on the other hand, Denver's playing Baltimore, and Judy's going to see either Marcus Peters or Marlon Humphrey, and Russell's struggling. And London's got a better chance of scoring. I'll give him that. A better chance of scoring. They didn't get him targets. They should have. It's a good matchup for him. I didn't. There's a lot of nervousness around Jeudy, so I would probably just go with London. But if you have a gut feel, go with it. Ty, thank you so much. Ken Walker has a great matchup because Aaron Donald's out and because A'Shawn Robinson's out. So you look at when you're setting your line, they'll say, number 1 run defense. Not anymore. This is like a middling run defense at best. Maybe without Donald and A'Shawn Robinson, maybe this is a bottom 10 run defense, but the numbers won't show up because there haven't been numbers yet. So I love Walker this week. Pacheco doesn't get a lot of involvement in the passing game, doesn't get much in the red zone. He's your pretty much 65 to 110 yards, so he gets you 6 to 11 fantasy points. Pierce has been bad 2 weeks in a row, and he has a great matchup, but the usage has been down. Jamison Williams, I imagine it has to be a very, very limited snap share. And then Sutton just has a bad matchup here. So you need 2 and a flex. So we're going to go with Walker, Pacheco. You know what? Sutton I won't trust because of it's a tough matchup. I'm going to go Damian Pierce as the third one. Sanders, Patterson, Pacheco, bench 1. All right, got to play Pacheco there, I guess. Patterson is a tough matchup for Patterson. So and Sanders is a nightmare matchup. They both have nightmare matchups. Sanders plays more snaps typically than Patterson by about 7%, I think. So I'm going to go with Sanders in that one. Man, Sanders is a bad matchup though. Yeah, I don't like Patterson's matchup either. I think Sanders is a better. They both have a chance of breaking a big play for you. Gut feel on those two, I will go 51-40% Sanders on that one. Oh, Sky Moore. So Foxborough, go back to your question. So Sky Moore is going to probably get you. He had 6 catches 2 weeks ago. He probably does that again, and it's probably about 45 yards with a 30% chance of scoring. So that helps you in that. Jay Sanders, Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White's going to get more targets than Sanders. They both have bad matchups. So I'm going to go Rachaad White there. Fields or Jackson. I'm going to go with Fields there. I talked about that one a little earlier. And thank you, Jay. And please hit the like button and subscribe. If you got 2 days free at RotoWire, go to rotowire.com/try. You don't even need a credit card. It's an email address. But Jay, with your quarterback, I talked about, I'm sure you heard me. So Fields, I talked about the same question with somebody else, but it is Fields because Jackson just hasn't gotten it done. And Fields, if he's out there, I have to assume they're running the offense, which is good for him. And Green Bay doesn't do well against mobile quarterbacks. Guy, you've got DPJ, MVS, or Hollins. I'm going to go. So like I mentioned earlier, if you heard me, that the Chargers play like over the top of it. They keep everything in front of them. So Hollins doesn't have much upside. MVS, we know Lou Anarumo from the defensive coordinator is going to play guys over the top. So there's probably nothing big downfield. DPJ is probably your guy. Ingram or Moore. I'm going to go with Morrow here because the Chargers give up like bottom 5 points against tight ends. They're very weak against them. Morrow's had red zone targets the last 3 weeks. Ingram's targets have dried up the last 3. Billy, I'm going to go with Sky Moore there. I just think his target floor right now seems to be more stable, and he should see a lot of underneath work against a drop zone. VSK, good morning to you too. Tannehill or Henry Day. So I think it's more of a Henry day, and I know Jordan Davis is back for the Philly, which is good. I still think ultimately you can run on them. It's hard to pass on them. And Tannehill, look, if Tannehill's get those single looks against Bradbury and Slay, those aren't advantageous. So I think Henry's the one to get that. Tannehill 205 yards. Oh, I lean less on that. And then Hurts, I think more. I think because if this game goes right, they don't really want to run on them. Dev, what do you got here? Let's see. Flex spot. Pickens or Brian Robinson. Robinson has a much higher floor here, and the matchup is very, very solid. Pickens is always very volatile because his quarterback struggles to get him the ball. And appreciate you being on these live streams, Dev. Thank you, man. Thank you very much. And then Timothy, Swift or P. Ryan if Mixon doesn't play. So the problem is going to be Swift plays an early game. P. Ryan, it's like 90% P. Ryan plays because it's being very unlikely. But Adam Schefter still says Mixon could get cleared. So if you don't have another option, understand there's a 10% chance that Mixon plays, and then you're stuck. So I'm going to say P. Ryan over Swift because Swift only plays about 30% of the snaps. Billy, Cordero Patterson, very tough matchup. Doesn't quite seem as explosive as he did before the injury earlier in the season. So a little bit worried there. I think Patterson gets you 45 to 55 yards. I think he gets 1 to 2 catches here. Touchdowns are always tough to predict. It's always possible he can. That's kind of where I'm at on him. Jason, you're very welcome. Good luck in week 13. Mohammed, Najee, or Pickens. Najee. Pickens is just Najee is a good matchup here. I know Atlanta's top 12 run defense, but overall it's a decent matchup. Whereas it's very hard to predict Pickens' outcomes because his quarterback struggles to get the ball consistently. Brian, you like Jameson was a sleeper play. I think it's going to be very limited snaps for him today. They're bringing him back 11 months from the ACL. The coach said earlier in the week it'd be a long shot to get him back. I think it's 15 snaps. I'm worried about the pass protectors' bottom 5. Their run blocking is great, and I really worry about Jared Goff getting him the ball downfield. So you know what? Definitely trust your gut. You swing for it, but I think that's a very, very risky play. Rob, good morning to you. Yeah. P. Ryan's going to get volume. He's going to get receptions. Jeff Wilson is a bad matchup. But last week, I know he scored 30 points. Dolphins didn't show up last week. So P. Ryan has a safer floor. Wilson has a higher ceiling, I believe, because Wilson is really, really playing well this year. So if you want a safe 10 points, P. Ryan, Wilson probably is close to that floor, though. And I think he has a better ceiling. Wilson's been playing very, very well. But both offensive tackles are out for Miami. So I will lean P. Ryan there. I will lean that. Pat, I got to go with Patterson there, Chris. Swift only plays 30% of the snaps. Goff or Rodgers. I got to go with Rodgers here. I think that Jacksonville-Detroit game, if no team gets out to a big lead, I think both teams will be more conservative. Rodgers might only throw 20 times, but the Bears are missing 3 defensive backs. Zeke is an option. I think Zeke is going to be good for 55 yards with a 50% chance of scoring. Robinson, I got to go with Robinson. Pierce's work you're welcome too. Pierce's work's been down 2 weeks in a row, and he hasn't been good. The matchup is phenomenal, but I'm very worried about this recent trend. Whereas Brian Robinson has an excellent matchup. Your football fantasy, Fields, Brady, or Watson. Brady is a tougher matchup, and he just hasn't been getting it done. I talked about this one a little earlier. I think Fields, if he's cleared, he's cleared to play. So he's probably going to be fine. And I think Watson could have rust. They both have risk, like Fields re-injury, Watson rust. I think they both have upside, but because of Fields running, that kind of is a factor that's out there for Watson. If Nick Chubb gets going, that could be like it, and they may not have to throw a lot. There's a lot more variables for Watson than there is for Fields. So I'm going to go with Fields slightly there. You're welcome, Jordan. JKM. Non-PPR, Pittman, Palmer, Lazard, or Zay Jones. So I think Pittman is a bad matchup, but he should get you a few catches. But the non-PPR hurts you here because I don't think there's a lot after the catch against Dallas. I think Palmer's in a good spot here because they're going to probably be in a high-scoring game. Lazard now has taken second fiddle on targets to Christian Watson, and I think they can run really well. So I'm going to say Palmer and Zay Jones both have your floor here, and Palmer has a fairly good shot at ceiling here. Delroy, Carter, or Zay Jones. Again, Carter had a good week last week, but he's been more volatile than Jones. Jones is a safer base of targets. For that reason, I'm going to go with Jones. And Iron Eddie, half PPR, Kamara, Robinson, or Jeff Wilson. I am going to default to the best player. He had 7 targets last week. That helps finally after the 4 and 5 of the previous 3 games. So I think that's helpful to him. I'm going to go with the best player here despite a middling matchup, but I think that's enough of a matchup to give me the edge on Kamara. Morning, Chris. You need a strong play for production. You need Patterson or Swift. So again, Swift at 30% snap share. That's very problematic. But Swift is a much easier matchup, I think, than Patterson does. Patterson hasn't looked quite the same since the injury. Swift is way more boom bust, but Patterson I don't think has a high ceiling here. So I think your boom bust is Swift, but you could get nothing out of Swift. So if you just need something, but you want if you're looking for a strong play, that means boom bust. And that means you got to go with Swift and hope he breaks off an 80-yard play and cashes because he can do that. Tannehill or Mike White. Can't advocate Tannehill this week. Darius Slay and James Bradbury are the corners, and there should be some pressure. Their offensive pass blocking has been terrible. So I'm going to go with Mike White. I don't think it's a great game for White, but I think it's a decent game. We got to go with Mike Evans here, Robert, because James Robinson is active and Ty Johnson's with 3-man backfield. It's a really tough run defense. I don't like Mike Evans' matchup, but I like it better than Donovan Knight. Cameron, torn for running back. Don't trust your starters. Sanders, Wilson. I'm going to go with Wilson there. Sanders is a really, really bad matchup. P. Ryan. Oh, you know what? You've got P. Ryan. There you go. So, yeah, P. Ryan. Well, I would probably go with P. Ryan, and I'll probably go Jeff Wilson as well. Kyron Williams, I love Kyron Williams, but it's still a lot of risk because we haven't seen him do it yet, and that's the biggest thing. If you want to take the risk that he will, it's an easy matchup. Then I could make the case of going Williams at him. I really got to go faster. So I'm actually just going to tell you the who one is. I'm sorry, the why is why I'm here, but I'll do my best. Slayton or Gus Edwards is way safer. Slayton only gets a few targets a game. He usually cashes with Gus Edwards. Metcalf or Kirk. So Metcalf should get a fairly high target volume. So I'm going to go with Metcalf because Aaron Donald and Ashawn Robinson are out, so there's less pass rush than Geno. Pittman or DPJ. I got to go DPJ. The Dallas matchup is a nightmare. DPJ has a positive matchup. Paul, Zay or Josh. Yeah, so Zay is playing. Josh Jacobs, true game time decision. Rod. Watson, Brady, or Carr. Watson, I'm going to say Watson there. Herbert or Fields. I'm going to go with Herbert's. Fields still has some risk. Herbert's been 3 touchdowns in 3 straight games against the Raiders. Wilson or Waddle. That's Garrett Wilson, I assume. I like Garrett Wilson a bit better here against those corners in Minnesota, but the pass rush is pretty good. But the same problem for Miami. So I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson slightly there. Shane, you're welcome. Cheers to you. DK. There's Slayton, Edwards. Edwards is the safest group. He gets 15, 16 carries a week. I'm going to grow with him. He always gets used around the red zone. Judy worries me in a tougher matchup in his game back. Need Metcalf or need 2 Mech. In the flex, we're going to go with Metcalf there. I think he ultimately has a little more upside in this one than Kirk. John. Need one of the following. Who did I start in the highest ceiling? Pittman, Collins, Chark, Dalton, Schultz, or DPJ. I know he hasn't had a ceiling game, but Collins has some ceiling with his targets have been way out. And with Cooks out, I think that is what we're looking at. Pittman doesn't have a lot of upside here. Schultz, you know what? Let's go with Dalton Schultz because I saw what Jelani Woods did them. There was a clear hole in the Indy defense. No, wrong team. It's the same team. Scratch that because that was Pittsburgh playing them. So I'm going to go with Nico Collins here. I think he could. Jose, thank you. Kirk Cousins or Mike White. I'm going to go Mike White there because Kirk Cousins is out as left tackle. Morning, not so silent majority. Evan Ingram. Ingram's, they both have zeros or downside. Ingram's been really phased out, and that's the problem. Whereas at least Higbee, maybe Wolford realizes it's one of his only weapons. So I think you're going to go with that. Pearson, now we're going to go with Najee, DK. We're going with Gus Edwards. And then we are assuming P. Ryan's going to play. If there's a 10% chance he doesn't, and if that's the case, then the other games are early. So, right, the Denver game, those are early. So that's going to be the problem. So you have to make your decision early. So if you have any nervousness that P. Ryan, Mixon may be active, then you got, but otherwise it's Edwards and P. Ryan. If you need a pivot, I would say Slayton. Hawkinson or Kittle. Oh man, you know what? I see Kittle in a potential blow up spot here. Hawkinson is safer. Kittle's more volatile. If you're playing a tournament, Kittle's your volatile tournament option. If you're playing a cash game, Hawkinson's better for that. Ray, Patterson, Pierce, Debo, Palmer, or Evans. Start 2. I'm going to go at Debo and Palmer here because Mike Evans he struggled last week, and we expect Marshawn Lattimore plays always been a bad matchup for him. So that's the route I'm going to go on that. Goff or Rodgers. I'm going to go with Rodgers. Even on limited snaps, he could do really well. Debo. Yeah, I'm starting Debo over Pittman. Pittman's just a bad matchup for him. Kyron Wilson or Gus Edwards, the safest of all these. He gets red zone work. Wilson, I think, has more upside than Edwards here, but I would take the safe, 12 points with Edwards. But if you needed a 20-point game, I don't think Edwards has that. Wilson could hit that, even though it's a tough matchup. He can get there. Chris, Bonus, Eagles, or in P. Ryan, Chiefs, Giants. So you need a defense out of these groups. I'd go with the Broncos. I could see them turning a big play, pick 6, interception, fumble, return. I could see it happening. Won't happen for sure, but I could see it. Hello, Phantom, Wilson, White, or Zonovan Knight. You know what? White's a tougher matchup, and he's going to split time. Wilson's like really the lead guy. Knight, they're bringing in James Robinson now, so I'm going to go with Wilson there. Question for the chat room. I'll move that on then. Brian, Olave versus Watson. And I think Watson is the most upside of the group. And I think his floor actually right now, I mean, he's kind of Aaron Rodgers guy, and the Bears are down 3 secondaries. I love Olave, but I think Watson is just as the chemistry right now. I'm going to go with that. All right. And then, oh, thank you. That's the silent majority. Sport Dog, have to need a flex. Ayuk, Jamal, or Rashad. So Jamal has a very good floor every week. Ayuk, I really think he should be a feature part of the game plan. Miami stuffs the run. They're not so good against the pass. So Williams is by far the safest, but I think Ayuk has a reasonable floor and he has a better ceiling this week than Jamal Williams does. Go with your gut on those two. I'm sitting White, but if I'm starting my lamp, I'm going to go with Ayuk in that one, unless I just totally want safe. If you want 100% safe, it's Williams. So there is some volatility with Ayuk. Fields or Tua. Again, both tackles are off for Tua. I like Fields. Hurts or Watson. Too hard to sit Hurts right now. Because Watson might have rust. I love Watson to play. I love his matchup. But I think Hurts is just too solid of a floor. And if Watson is rusty, it could be bad. Christopher, you're welcome. I think I answered this already. We're going to go with Fields in that one. Debo, so we're going with Debo. Swift doesn't play enough snaps. I'm nervous there. Pierce or Harris, we're going with Harris. Pierce's workload last week is problematic. Ken, Gus, Jamal, or Pierce. You know what? Gus and Jamal have that solid workload every week, and they both are really good options. I think Jamal has a chance for a higher workload than Gus. That's a coin flip between those two, but I'm going to go with Jamal. Pierce hasn't gotten work the last 2 weeks, so I can't really do it. Max, you're very welcome, man. That's awesome. I'm glad you're here. Standard need 2. Gibson, London, Moore, Burks. Yeah, if they do move, Mario and I were talking about the Syria show yesterday. So yeah, you're right. If London does go on the slot, you're right. He would potentially have a more favorable matchup. They could move a corner with him though. He's such a big guy. They might move Slay or Bradbury with him. And if they do, then that would change the equation a bit because they are without their slot corner. I think Gibson, assuming his foot's going to hold up, I do think we go with Burks and Gibson here, though. Those are the two we go with because Moore only played 21 snaps last week. London just hasn't had a game over 40 yards since week 3. Mark, Zaire, Smith-Schuster, they both are going to have a high target floor. I think with all the zone that the Bengals probably play Smith-Schuster. Pierce, Monty got him 15 carries for 122 yards last time. I think he's a focal point here. Devontae Smith gets targets, but only caught 15 of his last 26. I'm going to go Monty there. Zeke or Patterson, 50-50 on that one. Zeke has a better chance to score, so I'm going to lean 51 to 49% Zeke. Gibson or Burks. Gibson has a foot injury. He's supposed to play. He's expected to play. A little bit of nervousness about him there. I think he's riskier because of that. I think he has more upside in this game because the Giants are a soft matchup over Burks. But I think Burks is a safer floor. Because of Gibson's potential foot, I would go with Burks for that reason. If you think Gibson's foot's fine, then Gibson's a better play. Gus over Rashad White, more stable workload. White was a bad matchup too. Lawrence or White or Danny Dimes. You know what? I think Lawrence gets it done again here. It could be a lower scoring game than we think, but White's going to see some pass rush, but their secondary in Minnesota is bad. And you know what? I'm going to change to White because you can't really run on the Vikings so much, and I think he's got enough weapons. And I don't really like Danny Dimes here. They're not going to throw enough. I'm going to go at White. I'm going to go at White slightly over Lawrence. If you have a gut feel at Lawrence, go with it. Robinson or Pacheco, very similar plays here. Ultimately, because Robinson shares work and Pacheco's kind of got the early down to himself, I'm going to go Pacheco. Ayuk or Pittman. I don't like the matchup for Pittman here against Dallas. I'm going to go Ayuk. It's a way to attack Miami through the air. Thank you, Christopher. Dr. Roberto, Burks or Pacheco. What PPR helps Burks here. Pacheco really doesn't get much in a passing game. And Pacheco, he had the one touchdown, but he's not used much around the goal line. I'm going to say 55% to 45% in favor of Burks. If you have a gut feel, go with it. But I think Burks, it's a slight edge here. Ty, thank you, and good luck to you as well. Gustavo, Juju or Ayuk, flex. I think Juju has a little better floor, but I think Ayuk has a real ceiling here. It's a great matchup for him. Ultimately, it's a very close call. So if your gut has a certain way, go with it. I would start Ayuk if it was my lineup. Watson, Carr, Brady. I will go with Watson there. Good afternoon, Ed. Fields or Geno. Geno has a safer floor because no Aaron Donald and no Ashawn Robinson, so he won't see any pass rush. So he has a good, he'll throw you like 240 and 2 touchdowns. Fields has way more ceiling. So if you need the ceiling play and risk some floor, then I go Fields. Otherwise, you want the safe lower play. I go with Geno. Chris, you're welcome. I got to go with Gibson here, unless you really are worried Gibson's foot won't make it through Fournette. It's tougher matchup, but he's on the left side of a timeshare, I think, now. Lawrence or Rodgers. I got to go Rodgers. They're playing the Bears, who are 3 secondary players. E-Man. Revenge game for Mostert. Man, Mostert's in such a complimentary role now. He wasn't explosive this year, actually. His explosive numbers are way down. He's looking like the 30-year-old back, right? But White is a bad matchup too. But I think White's going to see more reception opportunities than Mostert, so I'm going to go with him. Gibson, Pittman, or Kyren Williams. You know what? Pittman's got to get some volume. It's a bad matchup, but it's very hard to sit Pittman with his role in the offense, and he could break a longer play. Dallas will gamble a bit. Williams is a very, very speculative play. I love him, but we haven't seen him do it yet. And that's the only apprehension when you got a guy like Pittman. And Gibson, we're not 100% sure his foot's fine. Johnny, you need 2. So I like Pollard's matchup better than Zeke in this one. I'm going to go with Wilson Jr. and Pollard here. Okay, and I got to rifle through these guys. Garrett Wilson, Swift, or Pacheco. I got to go with Garrett Wilson here because the cornerbacks are not scary at all in Minnesota, whereas Pacheco doesn't get a lot of work in the pass game, and Swift only plays 30% of the snaps. I'm going to go with Justin Fields here, Johnny. I think you'd have to do his normal role here. Dale Duvernay has a really bad cornerback matchup. I got to go with MVS here. Amon-Ra or T. Higgins. That's a very, very good question. Very tough call. T. Higgins is playing at a great level right now, and so is Amon-Ra. But I think against the Chiefs, the higher scoring game is going to probably be there. It's 51 to 49%. I'm going to go with T. Higgins. So, Ronnie, you're welcome. M Squad, Freeman, Rodgers, or Tua. Tua's missing both tackles, so I'm going to go with Rodgers there. Bill, you're welcome. TMOD, San Francisco or Cleveland defense. I'm going to go Cleveland defense there. Pierce, Olave, or Pacheco. We are going to go with Pierce. Didn't get the usage the last 2 weeks. Olave is really hard to sit. Olave is a tough cornerback matchup, but I'm going to go with Olave there. I'm going to go with Olave because Pacheco's has a good floor, but he doesn't get enough red zone work. He doesn't get targets. I'm going to go with Olave because of his ability to overcome bad situations. Rodgers over Tua because Tua is missing both offensive tackles. Travis or Kenneth Walker because the Rams are without Aaron Donald and Ashawn Robinson. That takes a number 1 run defense and makes them like middle of the pack or worse. I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker here, just in case Travis Etienne's foot isn't a full 100%. Walker was a little safer with that. Walker or Jacobs. So, all right. Well, here's the good news. Those are both late window games, right? Kenneth Walker, those are both late window games. If Jacobs is active, you're playing Jacobs. It's as easy as a matchup as it gets. If he's inactive, your decision is made for you. Homer Simpson, Olave over Zeke, Kamara. Zeke is like the safe. Like he'll get you 50 yards. He has a chance to score, but there's probably not a lot of upside with Zeke in this one. And that's Indy's a pretty good run defense. That's kind of my concern there, right? So Olave, it's really hard to sit him, but Kamara. So I think Kamara is going to get targets. He saw 7 targets last week, and I have to think that after he got away from him for 3 weeks or 4 or 5, they're going to get back to that targeting. And so I think Kamara is your best blend of floor and upside. Rashad White or Wilson. Don't like White's matchup overall here, and he's splitting time now with Lenny back. I'm going to go with Jeff Wilson there, Johnny. Yeah, Johnny, if they keep Fields in the pocket, they're doing him a dirty, man. If they do that to him, they're going to get him hurt. The only way to honestly, the funny thing is by running him, he's less likely to get hurt. Especially they teach him how to, get down. But if he's in the pocket, he doesn't see stuff coming. It'd be worse for him. Kicker question. The Rams, hard to say the Rams are going to score points. At least we know the Packers will, so go Crosby. Johnny, you're welcome. You're welcome, TMOD. Dr. Roberto, you say blesses you as well, man. Jerome, appreciate you, man. M Squad. Last question, I'm out. Aaron Jones, 100% here. Pierce has been hardly used the last 2 weeks. He's been down. It's a great matchup. Aaron Jones kills the Bears. I did say last one. I am going Watson here because Tua is missing both of his tackles. Everybody, good luck. Take care. We'll talk soon.